There we go.
All right. We shall call the policy committee meeting to order at 6 p.m. And we have our agenda that was set for last month. We didn't have last month's meeting, but we did not put it on the agenda, but we had also moved the volunteer coach back for discussion. So hopefully we'll have time to do that and just to bounce around some ideas about summer school, what we think we might want to use to frame that conversation, not have that conversation, but just what kind of information and things might we need in order to have that. So hopefully we have some time to do that. So Dr. Glover, it looks like you got that Title IX policy, the sex discrimination policy, cleaned up based on what the attorney said.
Yep.
Looks pretty, I went back and forth. It looks like, those suggestions were taken. You still had some numbers in blue. Was there something you wanted to talk to us about those numbers or?
Nope. That means that they were too close in color and I missed it. So I will go back and I'll just highlight the whole document and do it in black.
Okay.
And we'll get that caught up.
So is it ready to move to the board for a first read?
Yep.
Okay, so I think we have time to get it on for our next board meeting. So for the first read.
Yep.
That was easy. Thank you for doing that. The next thing on the agenda was the questions and survey for the exit interview. What I've never really figured out, other than to try to figure out how to get draft written over the top, get that draft piece on a sample of something I've written. But this was just a compilation of some of the surveys and questionnaires that you had provided to us, Dr. Glover, and it's the first salvo at trying to get something that would meet people's needs. So I did try to take what people had said they thought was a good idea from the variety of samples that we had. There's some check offs, there's some rating scales, there's some direct questions. So what are people's thoughts on how to proceed with it?
When I looked at it, I kind of like the balance between like checking a box and kind of like extended responses, so to speak. Just because I think it's a little bit more easy to understand. And then I think the important information in the extended response, kind of like those are the kind of the important areas that we're looking at. And then when you're, in the exit interview, you could always, if there's in the checkoff boxes, if there's areas of, concern or red flags, then you can kind of ask if they're willing to elaborate. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like the balance between the two.
Was there something that you said you wanted to have added?
So no, I think I wasn't sure, because we can use this for I think in the how would you rate your relation to your job? I think where it said training you received, I think I just said maybe just professional development there. So it can kind of hit all spectrums of, who's participating in this.
Yep. Good pick. Dr. Glover, was there anything that you thought that should be added, subtracted, or changed?
I'm trying to pull it back up. I'm having lagginess here, which is weird. No, I noticed there was, when I looked it over, I had a lot of that one survey I brought to your attention. And I thought that survey did a really nice job of covering the gamut of things that might want to be asked. So, for that there, nothing struck me. I was going to look at it twice to see if anything else had. But for some reason, I am lagging out whenever I try to open a window. So if this meeting crashes, come right back to it. I'll open back up.
Okay. Basically, there was no this is not my work. This just reflects, a compilation of things that you had shared with us. So I just tried to combine some of the things that were there. The only thing I did, I remember changing was there was something at the very beginning where I wrote length of employment in the district. It was, I think, the date that you were hired. And I figured people would more likely put 14 years than, now what September was that?
That's exactly what they would say, that they would call us. It's like, I was hired in September. I just don't remember which one.
Which one? So what? Yeah, they tend to blend together. So if we do that, add the training / professional development that you've received, do you think this is ready to share with the board or as a sample? I mean, we just need to have it with the other template, the one that has the questions. Because we had something and then it got dropped off and we lost track of it. Remember, we had the questions?
Yeah, those, yep. I mean, I think it's good for a sample to bring to the others and see what suggestions they might have.
Okay. And we have a few retirees, so maybe we'll get some feedback from this retirees. And it can always be changed. So
Yep.
Nothing set in stone as far as that's concerned. All right, so I will make that change. And should I just send that on to Gina for?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I think what we had on the agenda was policies in need of annual review. We do have policies that were listed in our policy review action table, but we haven't been picking them up for review. I know you had more in there that are actually required. I know we have to do the budget ones. Is that something that in this time when I've looked at them, I'm not suggesting any changes, but it's a requirement to bring them up to the board. So is that, how would you suggest that we get those done?
It's very, unless there's I think at one point when we had chatted, there was the idea of doing the work, like this type of work outside of the board, and then just bringing it back to the board, letting them know that these policies have been reviewed. And then if there was something that needed to come to their attention, we brought it. And if there wasn't, then there wasn't. I guess that's where your comfort level falls.
I don't really have an issue with the policy committee doing that work. I really don't. It's just there are there's 6 or 7 that you had given us that require annual review by the board. Yeah. So I just didn't know if it was just something that was procedural that we had to bring them up. I know that we said that when we did the corrective action plan for the controllers report, that we said we had to make some changes and we would be reviewing them annually. So I just want to make sure that if we have an obligation to do so, I don't think it would take a lot of time, because I don't really think that they require a lot of conversation. I just think it's a procedural thing. And for me, our minutes are our legal record of what we've done. If we're supposed to do them, if we just have something, we have just reviewed them and have that in our minutes, then I feel that we have our documentation that we've done what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
You probably didn't get a chance to look at this yet. I put it onto the agenda just because I know that sometimes there's connectivity issues, and it's easier for you to get to a link than it is for me to download something to you. Okay. So on the agenda, I put the catch-up schedule that we talked about.
Okay, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I have tried any number of ways with this, WebEx. I cannot do a split screen. With my laptop, so I can't
Sure.
pull up the agenda, or I have to close, I lose the meeting.
Okay, so let me share it with you. Jackie, is that all right?
Yep, totally fine. I have it.
Hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. Yep, looks like I am. But like I said, it is being really slow for me. It had just started and I don't know why. Now, I've been doing WebEx things all day today, but so here is, on the screen, I'm gonna see if I can make it a little bigger.
Oh, no, I can read it. That's fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
So for the screen, when I went back to the NISBA site just to double check on the legal pieces, and there are 3 that on the law that we have to review every year.
Mm-hmm.
And those 3 are the district investment policy,
The
the
purchasing,
purchasing policy, and the actually the Title I.
yes.
Our title policy split now, but that the Title I policy needs a review. Of the ones that we've missed kind of on the calendar because of kind of COVID and life, it's those first 2, the district investments and the purchasing. The one you referred to about that we told the auditors that we would review annually, in addition to that 5410 policy, is the procurement policy,
Right.
which is the 5411, which are all listed there. And then I just listed some examples, thereafter, for what could go into April and then what could go into May. It's as simple as taking that information and sliding it over to the board, into the board document.
Okay. Jackie, have you had an opportunity to look at those 3 that he's indicating for March? The district investments, the purchasing, and the procurement?
I did not look at those.
Yeah, and I no expectation. I put them in here. It was this afternoon when I got them in. So
Yep.
you had them in one spot rather than necessarily the screen piece they have in. But on those 3, we could review them right now
Okay.
if you wanted to. And because I would guess it'd be really fairly quick because there isn't a bunch of anything new.
No.
And then decide if you want to move forward with them or not.
No. How about you, Jackie? Is that?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yep. I'm gonna open.
If you can share them with me.
Yep.
I would have to run downstairs to the other computer to get the policies.
We're going to have Ann practice our wellness policy while we're.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so of course it's going to do this to me. And I'm going to be patient for a second. So here we are. 5210 is the policy, and this is the direct investment. So here, the investment policy, 4-fold, in a manner to safeguard district funds, deposits to be made to safeguard district funds, investments will be liquid enough so we can get to them if we need to, and then get the most we can out of each yield. That's the kind of the overall objections. The next section is simply the authorizations that go into place. Basically delegates the treasurer to do that work, which has been the business manager who's done that work. I don't know, I'm sure they share that responsibility or work together on it at least. And then they talk about the different types of eligible investments. Basically government type, municipality type bonds. TDAs are like money market accounts, savings accounts work as well, transactional accounts. Anything that's liquid. CDs are about as frozen, if you will, as you can get to. But generally, a CD hasn't gone over a year. Though there isn't anything saying it couldn't go longer, it's just you have to be able to get to it.
Mhm. Just out of curiosity, most of our liquid funds are in that New York class?
Yeah,
Or not?
yeah, Karen put up just about every dime we could into that New York class. Though unfortunately, with everything else taking a hit in the economy, it's not generating the revenue that it had earlier on when we first got into it.
Is
which
it
is
still a little
great.
bit better than the regular bank?
Yeah, I think anything's better. I might give you a better return of interest than the regular bank, I think. Because the banks just don't anymore for what you could get, even unless you're gonna freeze it up so they have long-term access to it. The implementation using the framework regulations, which authorize investments, procedures for things to be signed, to ensure the district financial interest in the investments, set standards for legal agreements. We get the attorney to do that work. Basically, controls over the money is D. Security, standards of security agreements and custodial agreements. That's again money protections. Diversification is the same as your 401k or your 403b, right? It's you don't put all your money in one basket, you spread it out, as it provides some safety so you don't lose it all with one investment or one commodity or one business decides to tank. And then standards have some standards set for qualifications for any type of investing that goes into play. I think the only piece here, and this isn't anything for us to act on, just to bring to your attention, is this last part of this last sentence, is that this policy we reviewed, which we're doing now, readopted at least annually, which we do at the reorganization meeting, or whenever a new investment legislation becomes law, as staff capabilities change, or whenever external or internal issues warrant modification.
Well, we have staff capability change.
Yeah. But I don't know if we're ready to make any changes yet necessarily for our investment strategy.
No.
Right. We may get there. I did work in a district that did a lot of short-term treasury bonds, which is something schools tend not to because you have to pay attention to them a lot. But we had a treasurer that had the ability to do that. And so, that district did that type of investing because she had the abilities to do so. So if it works out that we get some of those abilities where we could do that and it's feasible for the district, then maybe some of these pieces up here change, between the implementation and the authorizations of what can be done. But at this point, I don't see any need for any changes on this policy.
No, I don't. I don't either. It seems pretty straightforward. It's just the requirement that they ask us to look at it. So once we do that, how do we do that? Do we send something off to Erie 1 so that adoption date or reviewed and adopt, so that there'd be something on there that we've done it, or does it just stand in our minutes that we did it?
It just stands in the minutes. Anytime we actually, the original adoption date will stay, but anytime where if we've done an update or a change, it would follow underneath it.
Okay, but that's only if there's a change.
Readoption or a readoption, and I guess that's a practice we could take. But if it's in the minutes, kind of to your point earlier, it's official action goes in the minutes, and if it's in the minutes, then we have it.
Right, and even if we had it in the policy manual, the legal, record would be the minutes. So that seems reasonable.
Okay. All right. What's the next one?
Do you have any questions on it, or?
No, I'm good.
So that was the investment one.
Yep, that's the investment one.
Purchasing is 5410.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess I could have just gone and clicked to it. So 5410 is in the purchasing. This one we made changes to last year. It was after the audit. You know, it was
That was for the audit. We didn't change the policy.
No, okay. Must be 5411. We made some adjustments too. The big piece here was this $20,000. When we last talked about this, it was about its limits and making sure this matched up with the municipal law.
Mhm.
But there haven't been any changes since. So, you know, here it talks about anything more than 35,000, you know, an expenditure of more than 35,000 in all purchase contracts involving expenditure more than 20 be awarded by the lowest possible responsible bidder, you know, furnishing required security and sealed bid. So that's what dictates.
Yeah,
We have
that's
something
municipal
that's-
law for
Mhm.
sealed bids, but we made the change for purchases, much smaller purchases, where we had to have at least some sort of evidence that we had sought competitive pricing.
Yep, and that's in 5411.
Okay. So this was,
Yeah, so this one didn't really have any changes to it other than at one point it didn't match the municipal law standard, and so we did that. Standardization is actually we had for example, in the building project, if we decided that we wanted all of our equipment, like say all the Univents, that we wanted it all to be Trane products. So we wanted to be all Trane Univents, we wanted it all to be Trane controllers. And so we had one product in here, that way we could train everybody in one product. And to kind of standardize what we did in the district. That's what they're talking about when they talk about standardization. That's what this area covers. So here it's, you know, 3/5 of the board members. So you need a super majority of your board to approve that for that type of change. And then how that impacts, you know, the sealed bid and those other pieces, because the board is saying, we are only going to use this product. And because we're only going to use this product or service, that impacts what the bids can do. Otherwise, if you were to put out, like we actually did, for the like the Univents, it's we may have listed in what the Univent was, that had all like Trane, the same kind of equipment and qualifications and specifications that a Trane unit would have, but that might have been a Johnson product. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yep.
Piggybacking is that means we could just jump onto someone else's contract. Actually, we talked a little bit about this at the last board meeting about when we started talking about sharing services with the town. And so we can basically piggyback on their contract.
and is that the BOCES contract too for the food, the cafeteria stuff would be
Yep.
that too, right?
Right. Yep, for the consortium, we're all getting together, and then we'll piggyback onto someone else's contract for the commodity purchase. Annual review is this. It's what we're doing now. That's into place. That's 5410.
Okay.
5411, is that the other one?
Yes, yeah.
So the 5411 is the one we changed, and I'm just going to slide to here for the tiering.
Right.
So anything under 7,000 was no quote required. Just over 7,000 to just under 23 verbal and or written quotes, and then sealed bid for anything at 20,000 or greater.
Mhm.
So that's where it went into the procurement. And this is, you know, basically the process of, you know, most economic use of public money, trying to get the best possible costs for what we purchase, and to protect against favoritism basically favoritism, fraud, corruption, and so on. Excuse me, in the purchasing process. And then it talks about, what's up for a competitive bid. The board has set that expectation there, including maintaining the documentation with requisition, so we don't have someone errantly throwing them out again, as we had happened before the state audit.
So does Gina act as the purchasing agent? Does she keep those records, or do they go into the business office?
They go with the business office and stay with the blue sheet. So whenever you purchase something, the requisition, it's a blue form.
Okay.
And so that with that blue form, so and let's say that, okay, we're gonna buy a piece of equipment. And so that a piece of equipment is $8,000. So we needed to get 3 verbal quotes. So when we get there, they'll put on the piece of equipment they want and the price, but with that would be the quote, anything that required quoting.
And that seems to be working, and those numbers seem to be an adequate range.
I haven't had anyone talk to me about that. Or raise any
This is good
concerns.
news.
Well, sometimes no news is good news. Sometimes no news means I need to go look into it. It depends. But I haven't had any feedback on it either way.
Okay. But it doesn't seem to be a problem to get those, at least the verbal quotes?
No, it doesn't seem to be.
All right.
And here's the last piece on the professional services is kind of the exception to that rule. This talks about your specialized people. So this is, your architect, this is your attorney, this is your engineers. These are the folks that you tend to keep around longer. In that maintaining that stability of using the same people and the same service for a longer period of time isn't to the district's advantage to go to quote or go out for an RFP for a lower service. Doesn't mean the board doesn't have the option to do so if it chooses, but like going out for an RFP right now for Mosaic would not be in our best interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's 5411.
Now, it does say we'll develop administrative regulations. Is that the process that you just talked about, how you do your blue sheets and you keep all
Yep.
of that? Or
Yep.
how, is that all codified someplace, or?
I would have to see if the business office has that codified. That has been longstanding practice
Okay.
pretty much everywhere I've ever been.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's any codification of it here.
It's just that different, now they're webinars, not seminars, but they do talk about, those administrative regulations. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering where they came from and who kept them, I guess.
Well, we haven't. The policy build was kind of step 1 of 2. We haven't started the administrative regulation yet with the service. So, that may be something to put into the budget for next year.
So not all policies have to have the regulation component, correct?
That's correct.
So that-
only policies that say, that the superintendent will develop policies to, or the board directs the superintendent to develop regulations to enact the different pieces of this policy.
Okay. All right. So that's something that's developed separate from these. So, all right. Thank you. So shall we move those 3 onto the board agenda just for readoption? Recommend that be reviewed and readopted without change? Or do we just leave it to readopt?
I don't, if you want to put them up just for readoption, or
Does it,
there isn't a non-3-step readoption process.
so just a review, an annual
Yeah,
review?
I don't see anything here that require, Now, remember, the board readopts every policy at the organizational meeting in July,
Okay.
right? So at the beginning of the year, it's one of the things that the board reaffirms all policies and, I can't remember the exact language of that resolution. But every July between 1st and 15th, you readopt every policy. So I would think that just out there in a, if you
Review.
wanted something that had a vote to it, maybe it would be something about the board accepting the review of the committee
Okay.
of the following policies. That way, at least it's a board acknowledgement that they've been reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily a readoption.
Okay. I understand. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Jackie, does that make sense to you?
Yep. Yeah, it does.
Okay. So why don't we do that? If we could move that onto the agenda to accept the review completed by the policy committee of the following
Got it.
policies. And that way, if they, for some reason, anybody comes in with a long lens, they'll see that we did that. Pen, what size pen they're gonna come with, so. All right, thank you for that. And we did have review the pulse point. The only one I have so far is that since the last meeting is the January one. Does anybody have anything in addition to that one?
No, and it's there's an email here, and I wasn't sure if you had received it or not, and it sounds like you didn't. They have made some changes to that,
Okay,
and I will forward you that email
Thank
because I have to reread it myself. But they're not going to send them out anymore. It's going to have to be something you have to access, but I'll forward it to you.
so as part of the service that we have, they're not going to, if something comes up, they're not going to,
It'll still be there, but it's not going to be as active, it sounds like. I would have to reread the email to know definitely, and like I said, I'll get that to you as well. But there are some changes coming.
okay. Well, that puts you in the position of having to know what questions to ask.
Yeah,
Darn, if you don't know the answers, how are you gonna know which question, which ones did you change this month?
it turns into a calendar item to, hey, let's check the pulse point and make sure we don't have anything new this month.
All right. But so you say that they're changing their format or?
Yeah, they're changing their process of how they notify boards of new policies.
Okay. So if you could I did not see that.
Okay. I will. I marked it down here to forward to you.
And then as far as policies were concerned, we did say that we would take a look at the volunteer coach language. And at this point, I'll be perfectly frank, I was reaching to understand exactly where Bob was coming from. I think he wanted us to be able to cover all eventualities with our policy. But I did go back to the regulations of the commissioner, and really, to them, a volunteer coach is a coach that is not paid. That's the only difference. So I don't think we can change the requirements. I mean, it is what it is. It's a coach, and it just has to meet all the same thresholds, but we just aren't paying them. But they are, given access to the students and to the team. So, can somebody help me? Do you remember why?
I'm trying to recall, and because I was a little confused during the conversation. I think, was it coming from, because I think when we think of a volunteer coach, we think of I'm going to do quotes, like an assistant coach. And I think that he's coming from what happens if a volunteer coach wants to be the head coach, right? I think that's and I think we kind of suggested that, well, a head coach could be a volunteer coach in the fact that they're not getting paid, but they still are an appointed head coach. So it's not like they have to go through the same, like like if I wanted to volunteer, I would probably touch base with Stacy, right? I would give her all my stuff. She would touch base with Don, and then Don would forward it on, right?
Mhm.
After he checked, to make sure I had, all my courses and my classes, right? To be a volunteer.
Right.
Right. And that, like, so there, like that, I guess, is a volunteer, like assistant coach, where I think Bob wanted it to cover whether they're the head coach, an assistant coach, a JV, a modified, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's because when we talk about volunteer coaches, 90% of the time we're talking about that assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's I think the question came, that question did come as, so Jack, you're going to volunteer as the new field hockey varsity coach. You're also a volunteer coach. And was it a supervisory issue maybe? Because we were talking about that the head coach would oversee the volunteers.
Yeah.
When it came into student supervision issues.
But they're unappointed, right? Like, I think this is where I don't understand.
And that's one of the things I did go back, and when I looked at the requirements from the commissioner, the only thing that makes the volunteer coach different from any other coach is the pay. So if you have a volunteer coach, if a person is appointed as a volunteer coach, they have the ability to supervise.
Yes.
Because coaches have the ability to supervise. So if you were a volunteer field hockey coach, you could be on the sidelines and be the only coach there.
Mm-hmm.
You would not have to do it in concert with somebody else.
Gotcha.
That's the way I read the regulations.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that makes that volunteer, according to the commissioner, is that we're not paying you.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's where I feel like then it's an appointment, right? What are we appointing them to after that, right? You know what I mean? Are we appointing them as a head coach, right? Because I could be the head field hockey coach just without pay. That would make me a volunteer head coach. But I could also be like an assistant coach that just wants to show up here and there, help Stacy out when she needs some help when I have time.
Right.
Right. I think but I could be appointed as just an assistant, and then that's the agreement I have with Stacy. But if I am appointed, I think this is where Bob, now that I'm talking through this, I think he wants to make sure that if someone is appointed as a volunteer, they do have that supervisory ability, right? Is that I think that's what he was getting at.
Okay. Is it the problem that we put it underneath school volunteers? Is it something that should be a standalone, or do we qualify that this particular component for volunteer coaches is for those coaches who choose not to, oh gosh, how do you say that?
I don't think you do.
Yeah. So we
I
just,
think you do because you're going to open a box you don't want to open, I think.
right, you're right. But this one does say to be approved for the season to assist paid district staff. So we are limiting the scope of this volunteer position to assisting paid staff. And that's stated in our draft. So if we say that we are narrowing the focus for this for somebody who is just wants to, as you say, go in periodically. If it were, say, Stacy had to leave, it would not be an issue if you were to stay and cover because you are been appointed and you have met all the requirements for doing so. But as standard, you would be assisting, the paid position. So does that answer his question, you think?
That does.
So I think we could probably get away with taking that line out. The one that says, the line that says, that we put into the draft that says, assist the paid person.
Paid.
So to take that out?
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know if we take it out or if we add to it,
well,
like or
here's the thought, or a thought. It's that it's really a question of making sure we have the right person in the place. We've had people we've had brought on as volunteer assistants that we're fine with them being an assistant to another coach, right? Whether that's because they're younger or because they're inexperienced, or but we'd have a comfort level with them being an assistant to help out, but we wouldn't have necessarily had a comfort level with them being the head coach of a program or head of a program, or even like a modified coach.
Then you identify them as a volunteer and not a volunteer coach.
Right. So you
Because
say, yes, you can volunteer, but no, you can't be the varsity coach or you can't be the JV coach.
Right. But they can still be a volunteer, correct?
Sure. But through the, the acceptance or the non-acceptance piece is where we would control where that person goes. So rather than trying to put it all out in the policy of how that works, that can be left at the discretion of the board when they accept or reject their recommendation.
I'm afraid that might get us into micromanaging.
Get it?
Because if we don't do that with other volunteers. And if we did it for people who wanted to help the sports programs and they had all of the coaching
Mm-hmm.
and all of the coaching background, they are qualified to coach. And whether that somebody's comfort level with them coaching, if they don't have the comfort level for them coaching, they shouldn't be recommended to be the volunteer coach.
Mhm.
So
Which was my next sentence.
yeah,
Then it's incumbent to my administrative staff that if there's someone we don't feel comfortable there, then
then it doesn't
come to
move
you
forward.
all.
Because we if we say that if you are a coach and you have met all the requirements for being a coach, we can't say if we appoint you, we can't say you can't be the coach.
Mhm.
Only in these certain situations, because we don't do that in any other position. So if there's somebody that's questionable, then we need to do, then something needs to happen prior to an appointment.
Right.
That's the athletic director's problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we were just trying to get that administrative part, so that everybody knew what that meant. And because there have been those issues with people going in and out and not having the correct or the complete back, all the things that are necessary. So all the things to be certified. Just, I guess,
I think, can we add to the or because I really think the line that you made when it's the assistant to a paid coach, I think that's the part that is throwing,
okay,
right? I think that's the issue right there, because a volunteer coach could be.
correct. So just take that out. So we started with that one. Okay. But a volunteer coach is a non-paid individual who is approved for the season to serve as a coach. And so if we take out to assist paid district staff appointed.
Sorry,
All right. So
I'm
if we just take out the words to assist paid district staff.
Yep.
Okay.
approved
Is approved for the season to serve as a coach for one of the various levels of district competition.
Yeah.
Paid. Just leave it at that. And then it goes on to say fully certified or working towards that, just as any other coach would be. And prior to granting seasonal approval for the volunteer coach, the athletic director will review the required documentation, check the references, confirm the willingness. Do we leave this in here? The athletic director will confirm the willingness of the district's paid coach.
Oh, yeah. See, so that's,
If you put when applicable in parentheses after that, you'd be okay.
When applicable.
My apologies for emphasis on the wrong syllable.
No, that's fine. I'm just writing it down. Okay, so to oversee, well, then we got to take the word oversee out. To, where applicable, prior to the athletic director approving or denying the request. So we're taking the oversee of the paid
of the volunteer.
volunteer out. The athletic director will forward lists of approved volunteer coaches to the superintendent for recommendation to the Board of Education. Does that answer those questions? Do you think that?
I think it does.
I think
Because I mean, like, we are approving them for the season, and then when we approve them, when we appoint them, I mean, it's going to say, right, what we're appointing them as.
Right.
Right.
Whether it's, an assistant field hockey, right? That would be, or, the head basketball coach.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And to use Peter as an example, he asked to go in for all levels of girls basketball to assist at all levels. So, and he's one of those guys that likes to go in when they need him, or to work on a specific skill or whatever. So, but this gives him the ability to go in and work with the kids and the coaches. So,
yeah. So I think it does. We'll see what Bob says.
so we'll try it again. Now, we made changes. Is this now back for a first read?
I think it is, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just looking for, is what
Okay.
when we last looked at, what was it?
We came up on the board agenda as a first read.
Yep.
And we did get by with Bob dissenting. So it didn't get by on the first read, but now we've made changes to it because it did go at, I think it was 4-1, but we've made changes. So does that put us back to the first read or the second read with amendment?
I think it's second read with amendment, but I'm in the policy section right now.
Yeah. Is that in Robert's Rules of Order, or where do you find that?
No, that is policy driven.
Okay.
Yes, I am in the dark about every 15 minutes, Jackie. I like to go out. And,
I know. My classroom last year, it was horrible. They went out all the time.
they haven't got all the programming done for all the lights yet. So I go out every about 15 minutes, and once in the Gina's area, when they go out, they're out. You
Oh,
have to stand up and go turn the light back on again because they haven't finished the programming yet. Okay, so I'm in the right area. Policy and administrative regulations, let's see. 1410. The adoption of a written policy will occur only after the proposal has been moved, discussed, and voted on affirmatively at two separate meetings of the board, i.e. first read and second read. The policy draft may be amended at the second meeting.
okay. So we
By a majority vote, the board may waive the second reading and complete the adoption of the proposed policy at its first reading. So since there's amendment, you wouldn't be able to waive the second read. You would just have to go to a third meeting for adoption.
Okay, that, that gives people a chance to look at it and gives us an opportunity to have to amend it again. See what happens when you try to fix something, right? It's like my old house. Try
Yeah.
to fix something, it gets really
Uh-huh.
worse.
Yep.
And will you send that to Gina as well?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
All right, so, and then the. Applicable. Yep, okay. All right, and just the last thing, just an opportunity, we've got a few minutes before the end of our meeting. As far, Jackie, your suggestion that we consider some sort of options for summer school, just wanted to get you to think out loud and tell us what you're thinking, or.
You know, I was just thinking if we could, I don't know. I was just thinking in my brain that the courthouse does a wonderful job. And just, I know we used to do a summer school years
Mhm.
ago, right? And I just thought, God, if we could, you know, they continue to do what they're doing and not to interfere with them, but then maybe the kids that are going there, right? And we could reach more kids by inviting more to our summer program, whatever it might be. And I don't see it as just a remediation, so to speak, or, you know, I think I envision it in my head as being an enrichment. You know,
Mhm.
even those kids that struggle can still benefit from enrichment, right?
Oh,
It's going to
absolutely.
be at their level. And I just was thinking, like, how great would that be to get kids in doing, you know, like we have it in Granville, it's like School in the Sun or something like that. And it's really just keeping kids in a routine for those 4 weeks. And, you know, kind of the teacher picks something like a kind of like a thematic unit that they do throughout those 4 weeks that encompasses, you know, science, math, reading, social studies, whatever it might be. So that's
Mhm.
kind of what I was envisioning, as opposed to just a typical summer school, you know, where it's, you know,
Yeah.
I just thought it would be really engaging.
No, and I like the idea that the focus be uh, thematic, social, emotional, get the kids back into those cooperative types of situations where they're working with other kids and adults.
Yep.
I think that's, and I don't think it should be for credit or, you know,
Yeah.
I don't even know, you know, how you go all about it, but I know that there's things that have to be considered in order for that to happen, including funding. So, yeah. If you were to do this at school, once we open this door to say we want to be able to do this, do we have to consider transportation? Do we have to consider food? What do we have to consider in order to move something like this forward? Or can it just be, you know, 3 or 4 hours in a day, you know, a couple of days a week? Or I mean, I don't know. I mean, are there limits or?
If we're doing like elementary, it's what we want it to be. Right, we control that all the way through, even down to the point of, you know, retention versus not, for those conversations. When you're starting to talk about at the older grade levels with like credit and diploma units and those things, that's a little bit of a different bird. For lunch, the only reason we didn't do lunch for lunch, learn and play last year was because we were removing asbestos on the first floor.
Mhm.
So we're already talking about the summer.
Being able to do that.
Yeah, to be able to do that, because we'll have the primary building, and so we can use that for the lunch area and move the food that direction, because that building will be done. And that's actually where we're planning on doing any local summer school, is in the primary building, in that space. It'll be phase 3 in the document that'll be on the board agenda tomorrow. I'm just gathering up some of the costing piece that needs to more the personnel side of costs. Kind of the point of transportation, that's really district choice. I
Oh,
do
so
not
we don't-
feel, short of anyone who is in a special ed program where it's part of their IEP and part of their program, that's of course an aidable number, unless the governor changes it on us. But you know, the rest of it wouldn't be. But we know here that the more transportation is provided, the more likely we are to get kids to participate. Not to mention, in you know, kind of through that equity lens, we got kids who can walk. We got kids in Hebron and in Jackson who still need this. You know, so why wouldn't we go out and get them too? You know, it's for thought. But a lot of that is also on having enough drivers to do it.
We
Yeah.
kind of do a survey too, right? Of who needs, you know what I mean? When you like an interest, like if you're sending out, would you be interested? Would you need transportation? So then we can kind of gauge our numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get an idea who signs up. You know, we'll do some type of sign up, I'm sure. And then based on that sign up, we'll have an idea of where our routes would be. And then, you know, Joe will be able to do his thing, set up his routes for what he needs for his drivers for the summer, and then go ahead and do that.
And just another thought on that, like when you are planning it, I know when we were doing it, we just found ours is like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We leave the Monday and the Friday alone just because of a lot of people. We just found we had it Monday, I think it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like years ago. And we just found like we lost kids on those, you know, extended weekends just because it's summertime vacationing. I know it's a little different, but this year. But anyways, I just a suggestion there.
Okay.
No, I like the shorter week, the 3 days. That's a nice way to be able to do that. So Dr. Glover, are you in conversation with the Lunch, Learn, and Play coordinators for how to?
Herb and I usually start talking somewhere between, you know, December and February, you know, usually at a Rotary meeting where the conversation starts. Because we talk about transportation too, with, you know, the swimming and those pieces, which of course has been a different last year, and we'll see how this year goes. So we've already been talking a little bit about this in the literacy program, as well as the Lunch, Learn, and Play, because this year he's talking about wanting to do both. So we talked a little bit about keeping the youngest kids for that literacy program with the Lunch, Learn, and Play, because it's shorter, it's more one-on-one, it's more small group, and the Lunch, Learn, and Play folks have a real interest in working with those kids. You know, so why not? Okay, here you go, and go ahead and work with those kids, and they did great this year, this summer with them. And then we can focus on 1 through 8, at that, you know, kind of that broader elementary look, and then what 9 through 12 might look like, either cooperating with Cambridge as we have in the past, or with BOCES, again, depending on what that need is, because those older kids tend to be credit focused.
Yes.
For the diploma. So that's a little bit of a different animal. So it's phase 3 as part of the plan, that's there, that we'll be able to talk about here at the next meeting.
Good. So, you know, I was just, you know, the more you think about it, it just makes you think, it starts rolling the things, you know, you begin to think about. And, you know, staffing, point of contact, eligibility, food, I mean, it was all over the place, but it was just things that, you know, I know you have to take into consideration. And are there regulations that we would have to adhere to or work with?
I'll have to double check, because it's all a self-funded thing, and if it's all ours, there aren't anything there. The regulations really come in a lot when it comes to well, safety. We'll have to do a fire drill or 2, you know, we'll have to do that. That's no big deal. There's some regulations with the feeding program we'll have to do. Again, that won't be a big deal. But those are already in place. You know, there isn't anything new we have to worry about. There maybe have some authorizations from the board to allow us to have people keep working over the summer. You know, cafeteria staff is a school year staff. Our transportation folks tend to be school year staff, with a couple exceptions of what we need for them over the summer. That's there. So there may be some of those pieces where we have to agree. We did used to have it in a collective bargaining agreement, for summer school. I've actually, I sent an email to Rich late this afternoon about, let's find this in the old contract and see what it used to say. In my head, I know what that number was, but it's also like very old at this point, what that number is. So, so there's a little work in there. So there might be an MOA that'll need approval or those types of things. But overall, until the state tells us we have to do something new or COVID pops up with a brand new surprise for us, I think we're okay right now. Well, we're definitely okay right now in the planning stages.
No, I just was, as we framed the thoughts, I just didn't want to go down the wrong path if there were something that, we had to, as Mr. Jojo talked about, all the things that
Yeah.
the state likes to have oversight over.
Yeah.
You start.
There may be a state approval we need, but it's very different than the architectural one. Like the past few summers when we have done, like a summer school here, where we've had kids who do OT, PT, speech and that type of thing. We send in saying that we're going to have extended school year, even if it's those ancillary services, and they put their stamp of approval on it and we move forward. And that's more a funding thing than anything else. So there may be something like that we'll look into, but that may not be a board piece either. That just might be, administratively us getting something into the state for them to say okay to and move on.
Oh, very good. So I'm looking forward to the what did you call it? Phase 3?
Phase 3 is summer.
Yeah.
Phase 1 is like 2 weeks. Phase 2 is somewhere after 2 weeks and before the school year is over. Phase 3 is the summer and phase 4 is next school year.
And speaking of 2 weeks, when I was logging on to this meeting, I actually go to the website and I use that link from, and it lists March 19th as a superintendent conference day.
Okay, well, get it fixed. That's old.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, but I thought, well, that's going to mess up your Friday if it actually is a superintendent conference day.
So we deleted that out. That's we were proactive and got it onto the website so it would be there, and then promptly forgot about it when we deleted it.
Yeah. So just in case somebody looks at it, it's coming up. So.
Got it.
All right. So is there anything that we should put on the agenda for our next month?
I think for the next month, I have that next line of policies to review.
Okay.
So we'll probably want to get those. There's more next time. I think there's like 6. And now that you have them, and if we can get a look at them earlier, and like I said, I put them on today for review. Then we'll go a little more expeditiously for those. So we'll probably want to have those on.
Okay.
And whatever the policy pulse work says.
It was a discrimination one that was on the January.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll put that on there just to take a look at it and see if what we want to. Oh, anti-harassment. Non-discrimination and anti-harassment. They sound they're definitely on a theme here. Okay. Great. And we'll see if anything bounces back from the meeting back onto the agenda.
Okay.
So, well, thank you very much. And we've worked our hours. So thank you very much. And we'll see everybody later. So we'll adjourn our meeting. Thank you.
All right.
I'm unrecording.
Are we